Alright, so I just watched Fast 9, the latest installment in the Fast and Furious franchise, and I would like to share some of my thoughts on the film. It's going to be a little bit tricky for me to structure this video how I normally would, where I talk about the negatives first and then the positives, and then just give kind of my overall thoughts. There was a lot going on with this movie, and I'm still sort of processing exactly what I just experienced. So rather than divide it into things I didn't like and things I did like, I just have made a list of some things that stood out to me, and I'm just going to kind of, word vomit them into the video and just sort of reflect on those things. First off, the plot of this movie is pretty generic Fast and Furious. If you've seen any of the movies after Fast 5, then you're very familiar with the plot. Essentially, there's this all-powerful device that some bad guys want to get. If the bad guys get the device, then they're going to have control over the world or whatever, and then the Fast and Furious crew has to step in and try to stop them. So it's nothing new. It's a pretty derivative plot, especially as Fast and Furious is concerned. So if you've seen any of them, like I said, after Fast 5, then you're going to be very familiar with the plot. I did want to start off by talking about this movie's use of flashbacks. There are quite a few flashbacks in this movie. In fact, the movie starts with the flashback. It starts with an event that both Dom and his brother Jacob experienced at a very young age, and it serves to kind of show how their paths in life split from there. Just a few things about those flashbacks. I really liked who they cast to play both young Dom and young Jacob, who's Dom's brother, played by John Cena in the present day. The guy who they cast to play younger Dom, I've never seen him in anything before, but I thought he looks like a younger version of Dom, and even though you could tell he was kind of trying to make his voice sound a little bit deeper, I thought he did a fine job. The actor they cast to play young Jacob, I thought was great as well. I've actually seen him before in a couple things. If you've ever watched Peaky Blinders on Netflix or Animal Kingdom on TNT, you might recognize him. So I'm familiar with his work, and I thought he did a great job in this movie. The way that they use the flashbacks is to sort of tell its own story, to show the kind of split between Dom and his brother. And so the way it goes is we'll see a flashback, and the flashback will end, and then we'll shift back to present day. And then the next flashback we see will be picking up from where the previous flashback left off. So it serves to kind of tell its own story in the past. And for the most part, this works. There is one point where I got a little bit confused that I didn't think having the flashback structured that way worked. So there's a point in the present timeline where all the Fast and Furious gang is splitting up to go do recon or retrieval missions or whatever, and then Dom is like, I'm gonna go talk to an old friend. And then we cut to a flashback, and it's a very extended flashback. It's probably the longest flashback in the whole movie. And then when the flashback ends, the person that Dom is going to talk to was not in the flashback at all. We had seen this character in a previous flashback, so it's not like he was just being introduced on a whim. We knew who this character was, but normally when you have a situation like that, the flashback is going to show us, or it should have showed us Dom's relationship with that character to show why he would be going to talk to him now. And it was kind of a bummer because in this flashback, they did introduce two characters who seemed pretty interesting. I don't believe they were characters that had been in any of the movies before. And I was kind of excited to see how they would have changed in the modern day. And I was kind of looking forward to seeing how they would be added to the group. But, it just kind of confused me a little bit. I mean, you realize what's happening pretty quickly, but I just didn't think having the flashback structure as they did worked for that instance. Again, I'm just kind of talking stream of consciousness here, but this is the Fast and Furious movie that I think is most self-aware of how close to meme status it is. Fast and Furious has always been one of those movies where the physics and good dialogue are both optional, but you want to be entertained. And they've never really taken themselves too seriously up to a point. Like they want the things to, for the most part, make sense, but they know that you're just going to be there for a good time. But this movie got pretty meta throughout, and I'm going to talk about one of those ways that it did that now and one later. So the character of Roman, played by Tyrese Gibson, throughout this whole movie, he's just constantly talking about and reflecting on how he believes that they're all invincible, that all the stuff that they've experienced in the franchise up to this point, they should be either dead or they should have various serious injuries, but every time they get into a potentially serious situation, they just walked away unscathed. And so his theory is that they are like superheroes and invincible and cannot die, which, doesn't not make sense. Like, if you look at stuff in the previous movies, there's some pretty outstanding and unbelievable things that they live through. In this movie as well, oh my gosh, human beings are treated like rag dolls in this movie, just being thrown around, surviving impossible to survive car crashes, surviving missile drones to the face, being thrown out of cars onto the hoods, and being caught by other cars, being thrown onto the ground and barely having a scratch. I think the most damage you see someone take is like some scratches and a little bit of blood on their face. It's just, they really take a liberty of like what he's saying. So I think that's one way that the movie is very self-aware. Does it take away from the movie? I don't know, maybe a little bit, but if you've seen all of the movies, then you know that that's to be expected. So it didn't really necessarily bother me that he brought that up, but it does make it very noticeable the things that they survive and come away unscathed from. There's a very interesting celebrity cameo in this movie. There's stuff going on, and then all of a sudden a certain celebrity pops up, not playing themselves, but playing an actual character. And it's not a bad cameo. Like, this celebrity does a fine job of acting, and they're not known for acting. And I was just kind of so taken aback by this person's appearance on screen that I kind of stopped paying attention for a second to them explaining like who they are. So I don't know if this person's character is connected to someone in this movie or if they are connected to someone from a previous movie. So I can't really tell you if what was happening on screen logically made sense. If it didn't, then that's about on par with the Fast and Furious movies anyways, but it might have made sense. Maybe they are someone who's connected with a character from a previous movie that I might not have just remembered. So it's a very obvious cameo, like you'll know it when it happens, but it'll take you aback. It'll take you a second to adjust to what's happening on screen when this celebrity shows up. I guess my one pet peeve in this movie, and I don't know if they do this in the other Fast and Furious movies. I haven't really watched one in a while, but whenever they do like recon missions where they're supposed to try to go unnoticed, they always have the biggest earpieces, like these huge black earpieces that are obviously earpieces, and they also drive around in their like cool, sexy cars. And it's like, if you're trying to do recon and you don't want to be noticed, why are you driving in the most obvious cars? Like, the people that you're trying to, sneak up on are going to know, like, oh my gosh, there's a sweet car that does not fit in at all with the rest of the environment. This must be them. It just never made sense to me. Like, I get that Fast and Furious is, or at least was once, about cars, and you want to include all the cool cars that you can, but, that's one of those instances where I feel like logic should prevail. So it's just something that I wanted to bring up. I just wanted to touch on the antagonists in this movie. If you've seen any of the trailers, you'll know that Charlize Theron is back. She was the main antagonist in Fate of the Furious. She's pretty useless in this movie. What you have in this movie, and not to go into too many spoiler details, but you basically have like three antagonists kind of working together. You have the main antagonist who's got the skills to actually execute the bad guy stuff. But he doesn't have a lot of money. So he teams up with this other random rich bad guy who we don't get a lot of backstory on. So the one guy, the rich guy, funds the guy who can actually execute the stuff. And then they get Charlize Theron to do like one thing for them at the beginning of the movie. And then she's pretty useless throughout. And then, as always tends to happen when you have too many bad guys, one might get a little bit greedy, or two of them might kind of team up, which then causes one or the other to there might be some inter-antagonistic conflicts, I guess you could put it that way. So I just wanted to point that out. There's some dynamics going on there. Charlize Theron's character I didn't think needed to be in this movie, but yeah, it was just interesting how they chose to have the antagonists play off each other. So I wanted to touch one last time on the self-aware nature of this movie. There has, for a while, been a fan theory that, based on the exponentially increasing absurdity of this franchise, that there would be a certain location that the Fast and Furious gang would eventually go to. If you saw any of the trailers for this movie, you might know that that location was hinted at, that they may actually be going to this place. And without spoiling the specifics, I can confirm that they do indeed in this movie go to that place. Not just for like a second, they're like fully in this place for an extended amount of time. It's not every character; it's just two characters. But they do go to this place, and the way that they get there and the way that they leave this place are about as absurd as you can imagine. But again, it just shows that these movies are absurd, and that the writers are aware of what the fans are thinking, and that was maybe a little bit of fan service. But if you know what location I'm talking about, they do indeed go there. All right, so in the end, this is the 9th Fast and Furious movie. If you're seeing this movie, you've probably seen at least a few of the other ones, if not all of them. And you should know what to expect. So if you're someone who's going into this movie expecting to have to take it seriously, for everything to make logistical sense, for people to take damage when they're supposed to, for the physics to make sense, then you're not going to enjoy this movie. But if you've enjoyed any of the other movies, and or if you're someone who can just turn your brain off for 2 hours and not have to think about why people change direction midair, and why people survive insane car crashes, and can just enjoy the eye candy that's on screen, then you're going to enjoy this movie. And in the end, I do like serious movies, but I've seen all of the Fast and Furious movies. I know what to expect from them. So in the end, I enjoyed it. Of course, there are issues, but I had a good time. And I do want to close by just saying this. This was the first movie I've seen in a theater in about a year and a half. The last movie I saw in a theater was The Gentleman in February of 2020. So it's been almost a year and a half, and it was a really good experience being back in the theater. So I will say, I think for better or for worse, this movie will always have kind of a special place in my heart as being the first one I saw in theaters once kind of the pandemic ended. So if you can see this in theaters, I would encourage it. Would I have enjoyed this movie as much if I had just waited till it came out on DVD? It's hard to say. I don't think I'll ever know, but seeing it in theaters definitely did add something to the experience. Okay, so F9, have you seen it? If so, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to stay tuned for more.